All right, so Cody, welcome to the Redacted Culture Cast.
Thanks for having me, man.
You and I have had some interaction for some time, but I'm going to try something new today. I'm going to see if I can get an introduction on you done correctly,
Oh, all right.
because let's just call it like a basic level OSINT research or something like that. But if I
OSINT. Okay.
so if I go into if I go into YouTube and I check out that you have a channel called Bargain Bin Tactician. You're already at about 10,000 subscribers, which is looking great, and
Whoa.
you got a couple of videos that are already out on what I would refer to as sort of unorthodox options. I've worked with A3 Tactical in the past, and they make some great gear, but you're using a bullpup, and there's a whole
Yeah.
bunch of other stuff going on. So so
So
before
right here.
outside of like this, and that's just the outside looking in. Like you and I have had some conversations in the past, so I'm not going to dox you, but would you be willing and capable to introduce yourself for today?
Sure. I'm Bargain Bin Tactician. I started as an Instagrammer a little over a year ago. Just wanted to. I come from the music industry outside of doing this stuff, and when I was posting gun content on my personal music Instagram at the time, uh, I was losing a lot of followers. It was pretty funny. And I had this like thought like, well, I like since I lived in California when I was doing music full time, and then moved out to Kansas and got more into firearms because the opportunity was there, and had a basement, and thus this little area here was born. um,
One, nice.
yeah,
So, okay, so I already have so many questions.
sure.
So many questions. So let's before we get into that one, right now, just for everyone who's listening, you know that this show is actually supported by you folks, the listeners. So on the page here, we've got some of the merch that we've got up now, including the "Don't Be a Loot Drop" sticker with a glitter border. For those, I believe there's like 30 of them left in stock. No, there's definitely less now. Um, but that's at the time of recording. So we just got a small batch in. Hope those go well. If not, if you want to support us in another way, you can head over to redactedllc.com, join the community as we grow towards things like building chapters and having philosophical discussions over the things that we believe to be right and true and good. But you're not really here to do that today. Right now, we're going to be on the show. So, Cody, you come from the music industry, but you're losing followers on Instagram, which is such an odd, like not an odd. It's just sort of the de rigueur of our time. What when you jumped into like firearms social media versus music industry, whatever you're doing, how much of a like for some of us who are looking who don't have that extensive background, how different is it? Is there a wall with two sides of the fence, or are both sides dealing with the same issues?
Well, let's see. I guess they are facing the same issues. They do end up often on opposing sides. So a lot of the music industry has turned into more of a liberal side of the table, whereas the gun community sort of leans more towards the conservative side of the table. Not really choosing a line politically. They're just typically like that's kind of the issues they're pushing. Political and society norms over on the music creative side. Um, and there tends to be a little more of a love for traditionalism in the firearms industry that I found. Like, there's some family values in there. There are still like, uh, a lot of people are religious centered. They are, there are different things. Whereas a lot of the stuff from the metal music industry, there are some like it's not like there's a lack of Christian music in the metal industry, but um,
Oh, I grew up on it, like August Burns Red.
right.
What's it, a couple of the other bands that I can think? Do I even
Under
do I?
Oath. I mean, those are like
Yeah, Under
early
Oath.
on. Yeah.
Oh
Hates
gosh,
Today. there's a lot of those old early metal bands that were.
Kingston Falls. I got to see them in concert.
Yeah.
What's another one? August Burns Red. I've
For
heard.
Today is like the like one more like outspoken like Christian hardcore band.
Yep. Demon Hunter. That
Yeah,
was a
Demon
classic
Hunter.
one.
Man, that was when I was in high school. Demon Hunter, I think, was the first like Christian metal band I ever heard.
Yep. What a time to be alive.
Uh,
So just coming from the social media aspect, though, you hear this, especially like in the big name creators. Let's just say like John Lovell, with Warrior Poet Society. You'll probably hear it
sure.
every once in a while. I'm listing these names not as an accusation, but as like what I can remember of the amount of people who have had larger channels that have been around for a while. They talk about issues with like shadow banning and how social media is not our friend.
Hmm.
And we a couple weeks ago we put up a short Instagram video that had to do with how I think there was like a new, it looks like there was a new update that came out through Instagram, and a whole bunch of people got hit with your content can't be shared
Yep.
warnings. And we did so for those who are wondering kind of what the journalism of that thing came out of, we noticed that a lot of veteran pages were being hit specifically, even if they weren't firearms specific. So veterans pages were being targeted, or
Oh wow.
just
Okay. Yeah.
disproportionately affected. You saw like this very wide swath of people, ranging from anything in the airsoft community to gun culture to firearms manufacturers to social media celebrities within the gun world to
Mhm.
things like Eagles and Angels, who are just doing charity for like veterans and stuff.
Wow.
And so, and just like podcasters and people who put all this type of stuff out there. And um it's the reason why I brought it up and why I wanted to quote unquote do a journalism is it seems like the net was cast so wide that not only did it include like a target base, but it actually started sort of, let's just say, illustrating that there was a wider net that was intended. So for example, if I just want to
Mhm.
go after um I'm sorry, I'm talking a little bit too long.
No, you're good.
But if I like, so one thing that we've identified from like a culture war kind of problem is that the left has identified the right as like the AR-15 is the gun of the right. So there's
Uh-huh.
no surprise that the ATF is going to go after pistol braces because they can use economic war. It's a form of economic warfare and social conditioning to demoralize a political opponent.
I'm sure.
Which I
Of
mean,
course.
strategy is strategy. Let it go. But then the issue that you run into is this topic of shadow banning. So like people in social media are always talking about it, like, oh my god, we're being shadow banned. We can't find no one can find our stuff.
Yep.
If you've did you work within kind of the social media space for the music industry?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like I've been in bands and worked professionally for bands and my own artists, and like it is a whole different thing trying to advertise yourself in the firearms industry, because I mean, since day one, really, like I don't know, maybe 3 4 months into starting Bargain Bin, they updated their policy to having where it was like you couldn't show fictionalized violence or firearms. Their terms are clear, so like eh, they changed them, which sucks because it was like, I just started my platform. I literally had like 100 followers, I think, at the time. And I was like, wait, no gun content on Instagram? That's my whole point. And,
Mhm.
that happened. And the initial reaction, it like, you'll get like this notification that's like, you got to, delete this content or whatever, tailor it. But like, no matter, I tried for like a week or two to like figure out how the heck I could post it. But I was like, well, this is a creative outlet for me. I'm just going to accept that it's what it is and just post this content anyway. Whereas like when I was doing music, the harder part about music is just getting in front of the audience because it's so saturated. There's 10 million metal bands trying to make it at one time, or if you're a producer, if you're trying to market as a studio, there's just a lot of it out there. And because there's no restrictions on it at all, everybody's in your face all the time, which means typically only the big artists stay in people's faces, and little artists really don't get much chance to pop in and out. The algorithm, as you know, won't really favor content that doesn't get interacted much. So like, if you're putting out original music to a small fan base that's getting like 40 likes or something, like that's where you're going to stay. It's going to plateau. Um, the difference that I noticed with the gun community, that even since all these restrictions and bans have happened, my general mentality was just like, well, this is what I want to do. If they eventually delete my channel, I guess that's the price. But as long as I follow the actual, like the terms of like getting your page deleted, like no actual violence and those kind of things, um the I was like, I could still maybe get away with posting photos of my guns. It'll just give you the warning, your content can't be showed to non-followers. And when they first made the switch, I was really disheartened because like I had been posting content, and if you hashtagged it right or posted it at the right time of day, you could like catch a wave of interaction. So even as a small channel, if you had a couple cool hashtags in there and you posted a cool photo at like 6 a.m., you could like ride this wave of like, oh, I only have 100 followers, but I got maybe 100 likes, 200 likes on that photo, whereas normally you're getting like 20. Um, and then they switched their terms, so like they weren't recommending any gun channels. You were never going to be on the For You page. Uh, Hashtags weren't working, and they weren't naturally showing you to a wider audience. Like you can go on and open up a photo and click on view analytics, and it'll tell you like what percentage of people that follow you saw your picture versus strangers that saw your picture. And it would be from like, at the time I had like 100 or 200 followers, so it'd be like, oh, maybe 40 of your views were from your follower base, but then 3,000 were from the homepage because you used the hashtag sunset or something, right? So you could get like a swath of new eyes on your content, but then they changed their terms. So now like hashtags don't really help. You could do whatever you want to your gun photos. They're not going to get on the For You page. They're not going to get shared to people. So it really came down to the gun community swarmed around itself. Like all these small creators kind of got together and started these group chats of like, well, if they're not going to share a page, let's like, when you post, like just say it's in this group chat, and then we'll all go like and share each other's stuff, and kind of grassroots it. And it's funny how even still, I could pull up my phone and every post I have is like restricted, can't be shared to non-followers, all that stuff. But because the community is close, as opposed to like the music industry where everybody is just trying to make it as like a solo, that's it. Like there's totally center focused. Here it's like the gun community, I think, sees the cost of like, as a whole, if they silence like us on Instagram, then what's next, right? So like we can set aside like nobody's really chasing fame like they are in the music industry. Like it's just not really, I think, why you get into this. And so like there's not really that centered solo mindset. So all of us are like, well, let's get together and not let them crush the 2A community. Whereas, the flip side is like, just let me get ahead on the music industry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Would you? So when it comes down to the breakdown of values, from your point of observation, do you see that the value that's expressed within the music industry is different than the moral values that are expressed within the firearms industry, particularly in its use of social media?
Yeah, the music industry hardly has a value. Like it's very individualistic. Like every artist essentially has their own morals, and they just throw it out there and want you to accept it. Whereas the morals behind the firearms community, even if they're more, like I said, more community based, you're more, it feels more like a movement as a group as opposed to a movement as a single person.
One thing that I think I've had to, I want to change my tune a little bit on, and this is just a personal issue. It has to do with how I look at the firearms, the gun culture, particularly. And the issue is it's very easy to become jaded and angry about what people are doing and what people are not doing, and I've realized, kind of painfully so, that this attitude of just being constantly disappointed does not make for good community.
Oh, for sure.
So like there's, in the past, like in a philosophical sense, I've been more focused on anti-nihilism, which is much more, which is down to metaphysics. It's there is a sense of meaning. Nihilism would be the abolition of meaning. And 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 so like there, so not only, but where my philosophy was lined, I was noticing that my character or my perspective or my disposition towards the gun culture had become contradictory. I had started to contradict what I believed with how I was thinking because I'd become jaded against the gun culture. And now that I'm kind of on the other side of that, I'm starting to think, we actually really do have a good thing going here. We have a good thing going as a gun culture, despite all its bumps and bruises, because generally speaking, we get along.
Yeah, I totally concur with that, man. Yeah.
Mhm. So coming from the music side, it's interesting that you say that that like the music industry doesn't have a sort of collected sense of values. Um, I I grew up musically capable, but I don't have a good, let's just say, I don't have firsthand experience with people who are heavily involved in it.
Hmm.
I know bands and some musicians, but I'm not like, I have to admit I'm the outsider there.
Sure.
And so what I see on social media all the time coming from the music world is either, let's call it virtue signaling,
Hmm.
specifically from like the biggest mainstream angle, or it's sort of like false controversy, whereas gun culture tends to be very serious about its controversy. And
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I for sure, like the music industry, there's the consequences aren't uh I guess there really aren't many. If you disagree with somebody and they want to change something. Like it's sort of just somebody's artistic opinion, but like the issues we face with the 2A community, like yeah, like you mentioned, the pistol brace thing, like that suddenly makes millions of people felons if it happens, right? Like there is something more at stake. So maybe that's what drives us naturally to be more together. Like,
Yeah, it also like the it needs to go on the record that the pistol brace ruling, even though it's been stayed or held by a court, I think in Texas, it not only did it threaten to make individual citizens felons, it also threatened to drive entire companies into bankruptcy.
right.
And I'm not talking small companies either. We're talking, large financially invested industry or components of the industry all of a sudden are faced with a ruling that now they have to they I mean they can fight it legally, but I think this is where again I look at the gun culture as maturing quite quickly, and we're starting to see this as not an existential threat. We're not like that, let's just say, that foolish about it, but
Mhm.
something where the activities that are being made against us are not something like, oh, my aunt Janice is telling me that I can't own a gun, and so they're suppressing my Second Amendment rights. It's more like it seems to be a layer deeper now, where you
Right.
see, okay, we're at that part where we're reestablishing our moral foundation once more, and the gun culture is moving away from the materialism of the fuds and the boomers, not
Mhm.
which they have brought a lot of good things, but this wasn't one of them, and they're re-embedding themselves in a moral framework, so that even if that moral framework isn't like a good argument for their position, it's that foundation from which they can argue from.
Right.
You, and so that's encouraging. So you said you're on YouTube. I know of you on YouTube and Instagram,
Sure.
basically,
Yep.
and I've seen your work for a while now, and it's always no coming out finding that you're in the music industry goes, oh, that makes sense, because you've got a certain look and appeal that's, I think it's really well done. Like
Well,
I'm
thanks.
an aesthetics
Yeah.
person. It does look really well done. So what are some of the things that you've learned about the firearms industry after starting Bargain Bin?
Well, there's a lot of really hard opinions out there, and a lot of people really think their opinions are right on things, down to how far down the rifle you have your vertical grip, or red dots versus LPVOs, or anything like that. And I used to think if somebody had a strong opinion that was different than mine, that like they were either knocking me or I was like reevaluating myself, like, well, how am I right that I think X, Y, or Z?
Mm-hmm.
And while like I think our there's a million ways to get to the end of the road, and I'm learning to, especially since starting my YouTube, like to take things people say and just like actually accept them for what they're saying and not take that as like a personal criticism to me necessarily, even if that may have been how they intended it. Something as simple as like some people, like you just mentioned, you like my aesthetics and my vibe, that whole thing. So you probably like my longer intros to my YouTube videos that has like a cinematic section, and then I kind of introduce what's going to go on, and then we dive into the review, right? Um, I'll get some comments that are like, "Man, just get to the review, just the facts," or then I'll get comments that are like, "Man, you talk for so long. I just want to see longer shooting sections." So like if I cater to one, I'm gonna lose the other, and if I, vice versa. So back to the music industry, Rick Rubin, who's a producer, he actually has a great set of shorts where he talks about how you have to do it for yourself and not for the audience when talking about songwriting. And I think that applies so much to our industry as well. Like if I'm trying to build a rifle that I hope will get Instagram likes or I hope will do well on YouTube, it's not authentic to me, which means that I'm not going to really care about it much, which means I'm just going to be reading a set of like a Wikipedia facts to you or something. Whereas like I don't know, like that weird bullpup kit that I just did a video on, I really get a kick out of this thing. So like me talking about it is I'm passionate about it,
Mm-hmm.
and I do weird things that some people don't do. Like I don't know, weird lights mounted up, or the way I like to hold things, or how short I hold my guns. Especially for a big guy, people think like I have a hilarious short length to pull on some of my guns. I'm a 6 foot guy and I'll wear those little PDW stocks as short as they go, and they're like, "How do you even do it?" And I was like, "I don't know. It's comfortable." And but
I gotta.
learning that those things are just take it all in, but then you have to do what you want to do because that's the actual value, right? Like
Hmm.
instead of like doing what I think my audience wants, I need to do what I know I enjoy and then talk firsthand about my experience. And if that resonates with you on the other side, then we actually can have an exchange of a valuable conversation. Otherwise, you'll comment, and if it's just some build I put together to get some Instagram likes, I'm gonna be like, "Yeah, cool job, man, cool. I'm glad you like it." Like, there's just no substance either way.
Yeah, so like to date, my most successful YouTube or Instagram video is building out or painting and building out a PSA jackal.
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of a funny, like, it's a very, I built the video in my garage on a Saturday, like kind of randomly. Like it was just, oh, this will be fun. I'm just going to go paint this because I want to do some stuff with it.
Right.
Um, and it's like, and in legions and above, what anything else had produced. And so, but if I'm chasing clicks and likes on that sense, it's not very productive because like now it doesn't communicate the meaningful issue. Like I enjoy doing it, and I'm
Mhm.
thankful that that happened. So the point that I'm saying, I guess the issue that I'm trying to say with that one is, I come from this kind of mixed background of like I have one side that's very media focused,
Mhm.
very culture focused, and I've got one side where I've been very much so on the sharper end of the stick, so to speak. And when you're going out on a raid, you're going to go do a mission. There's a certain level, there's a certain range of acceptability for, let's call it, personal expression in the way that you set your stuff up.
Yeah.
And I think our movies and our video games and our books very oftentimes use a plot point to identify the main character as he does something that is abnormal, where and which ends up setting him apart, but that turns out to be the exact abnormality that was required to solve the problem that no one saw coming. It's sort
Totally.
of it's sort of a plot hole problem when you look at it in film or movies,
Yeah.
where like the hero is they use something as a distinction to so that he's identifiable from the horde, but then and people criticize him for it so that it's more noteworthy, and now you have this plot point, this theatrical product that turns into a plot point that has to be resolved somewhere later in the film to like
Right.
give it justification. But when you're going out on a mission, or when we're in a legitimate scenario where violence is likely, if not highly possible, um or at least that's germane to the subject, there's a certain range that you can operate in, and that's not infinite. So for
Right.
example, like if you're going to go on a deployment and a guy shows up because like your unit doesn't have any issues with you guys customize, just swapping out your stock for a different one on a AR-50 on your M4, and somebody
Yeah.
shows up with a like a bullpup kit for the M4, like, dude, you're not going out.
No.
You are not getting, like, I don't care how much you argue that no one in the squad is going to be like okay with this. Like, oh,
Right.
this
No.
guy's obsessed with bullpups. Is he? What is he? Is he a Frenchie? It's,
Right. Yeah.
they're going to attack you for your European tastes and wonder if you're going to start, crashing out to Eurobeat or whatever.
Uh,
What's the Eurovision? Is that the one? So,
they all sound like something.
mhm.
The
um,
there's a one. Dang it! Now I can't think of their name either.
mhm.
There's a like foreign metal band that does like EDM with like metal, but I think they're like East German or something. When it's anyway, it's pointless now that I can't think of the name. But
Yeah, when it comes
oh,
back like
Electric Callboy is the name of the song.
I was about to say, when it comes back like a lightning bolt, you got me to it. So Electric
Yeah.
Cowboys, amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like on the operation side, there's a certain limit of like personability, whereas in our side of the culture, it's kind of extreme.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Uh,
Especially
and
when you look at somebody like my page. Like I have no Leo or military experience, so like
mhm,
I'm building guns strictly because I'm like, ooh, that seems cool. Like
mhm,
and then I go suss it out over the weekend and play it. Like I on my other bullpup kit, that Reap weaponry ones, I had put that Strike Industries oppressor on it, and I just didn't really like the way like the spiky end of it looked. So I made a little like suppressor cover looking thing out of an old headphone wrap, and it looked awesome. And I took some photos with it, and I thought it looked great. It looked just like the burn proof gear ones or whatever, and I was like, this is great. It cost me like $20. Well, I went out and the first day I shot it, the thing just like it exploded off the end of the oppressor because
Oh
I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
it has vents all around it, unlike a suppressor that just out the front. So like the first round, the thing just disintegrated. I started laughing, but like I had already been posting about it, like a few photos with it. So it was one of those like, as I'm building things because they look cool, then I go shoot it and I'm like, oh, that doesn't work, and then
Yeah.
so like that on the other side of the thing, like that's I'm not at all like what you're saying. Like I'm not advocating for people that use these professionally to do the crazy things that I do to these guns.
Yeah, well, and even then though, there's the other side of the coin too. The other side of the spectrum, or the other side of the problem with the militaries. It can very oftentimes get extremely dogmatic about the use of gear, and it becomes self-destructive. Like, we've always done it this way, we have to do it this way, we're always going to do it this way, and then it becomes a problem until like somebody comes in and mavericks their way through to solve the problem in a new way.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of a really good example of where I've seen that happen. But one of them, I think, I remember one time in the military, I used to like to wear like a your shamag, and
Yeah, sure.
I used to like to like wrap it even when I'm wearing a plate carrier, and because on this deployment where I started doing this, I was carrying a lot of weight, and I would run it underneath my plate carrier, and so what it would do is it would take the weight of the plate carrier, and instead of having it sitting specifically on the straps of your shoulders, it would distribute the weight across your entire upper body, especially across your, because we were carrying rucks as well.
Yeah.
And so like early on, I mean, and the reason why I did it though too, like the reason why I started doing it was not because of that. I was like, oh, it's in Call of Duty, it looks cool.
Right. Yeah.
Plus, we were working out of helicopters all the time, and so I wanted to make sure I had something to cover my face up when we were dealing with brownouts, where the helicopter kicks up dirt and shale, and it starts, creating a visual issue. So, or it makes it hard to breathe. But so like early on, there was a bit of ridicule, and then by the end of the deployment, we were ordering them in bulk so that we could use them for the heat, to soak them in cold water in a well, because you couldn't drink the well water, it was non-potable, but you could soak it in water, run it under your kit, cooling yourself off and distributing that weight better.
Yeah.
And that's something, I mean, I guess I kind of toot my own horn for that one, and by now kit has changed it enough where it's no longer an issue, but I remember specifically that being one of those solutions. And for a very short while, there was a lot of resistance to it. No one wanted to do it, and I wasn't like telling everybody to do it, but eventually it caught on, and I'm not the first person to create it, but that's just my microcosm.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so and there's another thing too that our gun culture is really good at, is finding unorthodox ways to solve orthodox problems. So I'm here for it.
Oh yeah, I mean, even back to the pistol brace thing. Even the pistol brace at all was like a fix to the ridiculous SBR laws. And then when then braces were being pulled out, I mean, I kind of think the bullpup kits are a neat answer to that too. Like, well, then you don't need a brace, just put a pistol lower in there and a tiny little 8-inch upper, and now you've got a P90 size gun that's shooting 300 blackout. Are you happy now? But like none of those things would have existed, I think, had there never have been an SBR ruling. Like there would have been no need to ever innovate a pistol brace, and then there would have been no need to think about, well, how the heck can we make pistols cool? Like even the first time I shot a AR pistol with, I mean, back in like the early 2000s, it was just the like styrofoam tube over the back, and I was like, this is so ridiculous and ugly. Like, who the heck would do this? And then I lived in California, and I was like, well, at the time, I could get a 80% lower and build that 80% lower into an AR pistol, and then that was the only way I could get a short barrel at all in California. So, like, again, you just kind of figure out how to make do, and the rules have since changed. I think in California, you can't even do that anymore. But like innovation, it kind of happens when we're faced with these like ridiculous hardships, sort of.
What's the phrase? Innovation. Let's see. Necessity is the mother of innovation.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Mhm. Which is, do not say that to a person who's working on modal logic. They'll have an aneurysm.
Uh-oh.
Because in philosophy, necessary, specifically in referring to modal logic, is it must exist in all possible worlds, which is not to be a multiverse conversation, but it's like it has a different meaning.
Yeah, sure.
Like, for example, numbers. There's a debate whether or not numbers are necessary. Is it possible for there to be a world where there is no division between objects? And the answer is no. I mean,
Oh, wow.
kind of,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I don't need the word one and two to recognize that these two items are not the same thing, and so therefore we necessarily have numbers. But in our world, we're like necessary as some sort of distinction to need or indication of need. It's That's me being a nerd.
So yeah, so less of it existing and more of the need for it existing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So alrighty. So then, with your what are some of the things that you've tried with your builds and your kit and how did you how do you look at those problems? I guess what I'm trying to avoid is, let's just talk about gear. What I
Mhm.
want to do is I want to look at your thought process, and how do you look at kind of the industry as a whole, and the culture as a whole, and like different communities, and how do you start building your ideas, and how do you what important information can I steal from you and then make money off of myself?
Right. Right. Well, like for me, initially, like I initially just was making content because I just wanted to like take cool pictures. I'm a creative guy, and when I moved to Kansas, we initially moved to Kansas because I was having a kid and can't really tour full time. Or you can. I didn't want to tour. I wanted to be around. So like transitioning out of doing music as like a full time career, that was like all my creative outlet, right? So then focusing on family stuff and then working on how I live in the Midwest and I get into firearms. And then I'm like, well, I'm going to use my creative stuff and start taking creative photos of stuff I like. Uh, I had never had any plans to like make content to reach a wide audience or make YouTube videos. Um, and then because I don't have one handy. I had because I was basing everything off like Call of Duty and Arma and games I liked playing. I loved the look of like a light and a laser combo on a gun, but I had no night vision. I had a light on my gun, but it was like a O light, so I bought like a cheap Sightmark low pro laser and I slapped it on my build and I thought it was the coolest thing ever and started putting photos of it up and then I had that was when I first started getting like hate from people because they'd be like, what is that? That's a Sightmark like cheap laser. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. And they're like, why do you have it on a VLTOR rail? And I'm like, well, I wanted one. I don't. And then
Yeah.
you kind of like dig into that. But anyway, so then Sightmark reaches out because they're about to release the Wraith, the night vision, the digital night vision.
Mm.
And I went to then go, well, what is this? And I didn't see anything about it. And I was like, well, I've got gear. I used to shoot music videos. Let me just throw a quick YouTube video up about this because there's no information about it. So like I was just trying to be helpful to because from our community, the community, like I know there's guys who love night vision but can't afford it, and I fell into that category and thought, well, this is pretty cool. Let me make a little YouTube video on it, and it filled a hole and it did well. And then I didn't make another video till I got the other one, and I was like, well, now let me talk about this. And then I didn't really make another YouTube video till I got the Psy Bullpup kit because it was the same thing. It was like I don't just want to make content to make content. Like I want to make content when it's something I really am passionate about sharing with people, or I think the industry could benefit from as a whole, right? Um, so once my mind shift switched to just like, well, doing it on the things I want and feel like are worth sharing, it it it's easier to focus on that content and be able to share my insight and have it have some value because like I'm never going to be able to talk to somebody who like you like who has combat experience or served in the military and tell you tactics bar by any means, but I can sure tell you how this one item I've used, how it works for the things I use it for. And that's always the angle I try to come about it. Like even with my night vision videos, I'm like, I use it to take my dog out to poop at 11 p.m. Like I'm not kicking indoors, but for what I'm doing, I love it. Like if when I go out to the range and shoot at night, it's great, And then
Mm-hmm.
because of that, I got to use real night vision, and I was like, oh my gosh, look at the stars, and
It's so cool.
it's insane.
It's so cool. Yeah. No, you can't use there's just nothing like it. Now, and like I'm thankful that the process or the prices of night vision equipment is getting lower and lower and lower and more available to people.
Sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Good stuff.
Hmm.
The next side of that one, I think the next part of it that stands out for me as well is or you were talking about tactics and like not wanting to talk about tactics, and
Mhm.
I think this is another thing that really coming from my side. It's there's like we all do the literally me thing with Ryan Gosling from
Yeah,
every
especially
movie
Blade
he's ever
Runner.
been in.
Yeah.
But like Blade Runner 2, where the one lady's talking about like the world is built on a wall or something like that, and if you tear the wall down, you get a war. You don't get a war, you get a slaughter or something. And like,
Mhm.
so if there's a wall, I'm on one side, and that's the veteran special operations background side.
Right.
But when we're talking about gun culture, there really is no wall. It's entirely artificial, almost entirely built in our minds. And the issue that I would bring up when it comes to this whole teaching tactics and talking tactics thing is it really comes down to something really, really simple. Like, people will criticize different characters for it all the time, but it comes down to stop bullshitting me. Like,
Right.
you're not who you say you are, and
Mhm.
that is not what that is. And so it's the same thing with like the literally just as good argument is no one's saying that a Palmetto State Armory rifle is literally just as good as a pick your bougie one now, the new
Right.
Noveske SCI or the new or a Knight's Armament SR-15. Like,
Yeah.
no, the problem is though, like, that is an improper comparison. They're
Right.
it's just it, and so when somebody is coming around and saying that, what they're really trying to say is they don't think that you're like, when I come I'm gonna even tangent a little bit further. When I think has happening, when people will try to make this weird argument that X is just as good as Y, what they're trying to say, they're probably emotionally responding to some sort of feeling of elitism, but
Mhm.
also trying to justify what would be what I would consider a what do you call it, a lack of self-confidence. There's something missing in the person. It's like,
Oh yeah.
you don't need to tell me that X is just as good as Y. I want to I'm here to do things with you and see how you perform. Like, okay,
Yeah.
that's it.
No, and I mean that I relate to that hard because okay, back to that sight mark laser, right?
Mhm.
Like everyone's like, get them all, and I'm like, bro, this sight mark laser was $60. What do you mean get them all? Like, yeah, I know the mall's awesome, but like, like I have on especially at that build at the time, like I had like a Vism red dot and a
Mhm.
like sight mark laser and an Olight. I'm like, why would I all of a sudden buy an Engol or a PEC? Like, that's insane.
Yeah.
But I also am not trying to be like it's a mall. And right now I've been posting a bunch of photos of this like it's a smaller laser company that I just stumbled upon because a follower of mine sent it to me and was like, "Look at this cheap laser," and I was like, "Wow, I've looked on Amazon and I've never seen that cheap laser. How the heck's that possible?" And I I've been posting about them because they are pretty cool. They're like sub $200. They have an IR laser, a regular laser, and either a white light or a IR light. Basically, what a PEC does, but for super cheap. But it is nowhere near like quality performance of a PEC. But whenever I post about it, people come at me like I'm trying to say that, and I'm like, I'm just trying to say that this is a cool $200 thing. I'm not also trying to say it's going to be better or you should put it on your rifle in place of the $3,000 item. Like, that just as good argument is a strange one to me because like
It's a really weird one that comes up from time to time, and it just kind of it just like returns like this weird zombie
yeah
of it's just like it's an insecurity that has to get vocalized. I'm actually on your Instagram right now looking for the laser to see if I can. Oh, there it is. Okay.
yeah
SM
SMS yes
SMS. Yeah, I don't know about them either. I got some ads for them in the past, for
it's
sure.
probably me on it.
Oh, okay. Well, they did the imagery did look good. You know, and I think one thing though, or one part I think that you see, what I would like to see as our gun culture matures a little bit is kind of articulating and voicing what our real concerns are. For example, the issue, let's just say Garand Thumb, right? Garand Thumb does a review on a rifle. Well, Garand Thumb is in a status position where he doesn't like, it's not the same for the average user, right?
Right.
He doesn't, he does for every, one of the things that put him on the table was he was doing these longer round count reviews, which is a great thing. He was adding some transparency, literally the let's talk about how I got this item. He added those
Yep.
segments to the lexicon. And yet, so like at the same time, for some people, it's like a little bit difficult to try to view that position where it's like, I don't have the ability to use 10 different lasers right now. I
Right.
don't.
Mm-hmm.
I'm using a PEC 15 that fell off the back of a truck somewhere,
Yeah.
metaphorically.
Right. Uh-huh.
Like in Minecraft, I don't know. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't matter, right? um, but the point that one, with that one being said, is so what the culture wants to do is it wants to gain this level of sort of equality on standing, even though status is going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
But with the way that we do that is just talk like, what is it that bothers you? Why is it, and how do we find a solution?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, even the digital night vision, that's the same. Like people hop in and be like, "Oh, you need a nice set of like L3s or something." I'm like, "Yeah, that'd be sick, but that's $20,000." And so
mhm,
then I'm always just like, "Well, what is it that you really hate about the wraiths?" Like, I get they're not analogs, but like, and then usually people either vanish, they don't come back with something, or they'll come back with like some opinion that I'm like, well, you've clearly never put on the race then, because that's not what they're like, or X, Y, or Z. The examples for any item could go down the line, but like they'll take like, oh, if Lamborghini is the best, fastest, most awesome car there is, should you never buy a Civic? Like, well, no, Civics of course have their place. Like,
mhm,
you must have Civics. Not everybody can afford a Lamborghini, and if everybody drove around Lamborghinis, that'd be retarded. Like so,
mhm.
it's the same as true of this. I think.
Yeah, well, if everyone drove Lamborghinis, they wouldn't be Lamborghinis, would they? They'd be,
Right. It'd be a Civic, and then there'd be some
yeah.
other elite thing that was not allowed. Like
It's always going to be the case. So
right.
this is I'm not particularly familiar with the Wraith set of night vision.
Sure. Yeah.
And you said they're a digital set.
Yeah. It's a digital monocular that Sightmark sells, and it's a little larger than a PVS 14, but it's helmet mountable. It's got a 17-degree field of view, so it's pretty tiny. But you can mount two of them up together. It's got like a USB powered bridge. It's essentially a 4K camera on the front that
Mhm.
has the IR filter removed, and then each monocular has a really powerful 850 some nanometer IR. So it is the kind that it's like a little cigar light. If you're like out in the woods, you can see that little red glow. But if you're like I said, I use them at night to take my dog out and look for coyotes and go hiking, and I can walk around my house with them and look around. And of course, I'm always casting a huge IR cone. But like
Mm,
coyotes don't know that, So that's always like that set of the use of them. Like if you're like a hiker or a hunter, or if you just want to get some training in and you want to be able to record some night vision footage, like they're brand new, like $700. They've been on sale for $499 for a few months. So like you can get two if you wanted for less than $1,000 and be able to do 4K recording and go out at night and give one to your buddy, and you could both do some night shooting with IR lasers that like this. Like I think the Wraith for $700 and the SMS laser for $200, like that's like the most budget I would ever go for night vision, because I actually even do have a set of cheaper, like I got it off of some knockoff website. It looks like a PVS 18, but it's just a little digital night vision thing. It's probably $100,
mhm,
and it has all the problems that everybody leaves comments about the Wraith on, like, oh, it's got such a low frame rate you can't turn your head. Well, yeah, that one, it's like almost like a stop motion. It's like probably
mm,
12 frames a second. It's really hard to do anything with. But the Wraiths are 60 frames a second, and like you can move your head around and you can aim quickly, and I do little bill drills and run little courses at night with my buddies out at the flat range, and I can keep up with people who have PVS 14s. But like
mhm.
if I did that with the cheaper set, I would be stumbling around and never be able to aim at things, right? Like,
Yeah.
but you can tell somebody saw a review of like a cheap digital night vision, and then they just associate that with all digital night vision. Like I'll see the same comments on like a Psionics review, and I'm like, okay, that's a $4,000 digital night vision unit. I know it doesn't have a bad frame rate. I just know it doesn't, because like the
Mhm.
the cheapest digital cameras don't. If your iPhone, you can take it out and just point it at night, and I mean, that's practically all the Wraith is doing. It's using infrared sensors to brighten up the image. So
Yeah. There's a certain, let's call it disingenuousness when you compare like a 46 or I'm sorry, a 2600 FOM dual tube set with a, let's just say like a higher end PVS 31 compared to like a Sightmark would not be a fair comparison.
not at all. Yeah.
And for sure, I think that's one side of the issue. It's like you're comparing high end to lower end on that sense. But the other side, that there is another issue that comes into where digital night vision is trying to catch up with, which has been performance at the cutting edge of things. And I don't know whether it will achieve it. And I'm not really here to make that scientific claim because it's not my forte per se, but I
Right.
can understand where the suspicion would be. And particularly, I've seen this happen a number of times where, or something kind of like this pattern happened before. I think that's probably the best way of saying it, is where um, you'll get you'll get somebody. What this is what it looks like from the outside. It looks like somebody comes from outside the gun culture and the gun industry, comes into the gun industry with a long stack of ideas. Like, well, I know business and I can figure out manufacturing and I can build a company. And
Mhm.
so they're like, oh well, everyone's trying to sell night vision for $4,000 or $5,000 a piece. Why don't we sell one for 1,500? But we're going to use digital technology to make it happen because we've got a chip manufacturer in Taiwan or whatever.
Right.
Sure, you got that, but like you don't what that person doesn't have, this businessmanning. Oftentimes, what he misses is the human interface issue, and that needs to be corrected quickly, because if he doesn't have somebody in his staff that identifies it, the market will certainly do it fast as well.
Mhm. Yep.
And that is, a problem where I think the gun culture is excelling in its solutions, however, is some of the things kind of like what you're doing. They're exploring a sort of a frontier of different things to do with different things.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
yeah, for sure. I get that.
a digital monocular night vision set, if it's got a recording capability, now you can have that and do some stuff with it, sure. But then you can add it to something like, I'm going to now go film a night thing that I'm going to go shoot. And that opens up an entire spectrum, no pun intended, of things that people couldn't do 10 years ago
Yeah.
because of digital night vision technology.
Absolutely. Yeah, and like the skills you can develop while and I don't know, like I was not even into half of this stuff prior to getting the wraiths. I mean, I'm a good example of the path it can take you on. Like, I had no need for night vision stuff because I had no interest. Once I saw the price tag, I was like, I like to shoot a couple times a month. I this isn't my full-time gig. I'm never going to drop that money on there. But then I get the wraith and I got one, right? Like, Sightmark reached out and they gave me one. So that was the only reason I got one at all. And then
Mm.
I was like, dang, this is really cool. So then I bought the second one and I was like, $600. I'm all in for a dual pair because I only had to buy one. That's really cool, right? Like, that's something I'd probably only ever do this one time in my life. And then
Yeah. Now you've got a pair of GP on the way, right?
right, it's like you then I go out and I train with it, and like at first I'm just pumped about it, right? It's like, this is the coolest thing ever. And then
Mhm.
I get a PVS 14 and I see how much better it is to be able to look down and see my gear instead of looking down and seeing the edge of my toes, right? Like, because it's just zoomed in that much further. And then it's like, well, crap, now I want to if I want to take this night training I've been doing and make it actually useful, like, now I need to do the next step. And then you see, like, well, having IR is kind of ridiculous. If I want to fight somebody that also has night vision, I can't have an IR cone that's 200 yards throw, like, they'll see me from that far away.
Mhm.
Yeah, so then, like, I would have never seen the risks, or even down to little things. Like, I didn't know my Ring camera had a bright IR light on it. And of course it does. How did it see at night? But prior to having the Wraith and understanding that that's what digital night vision is just a camera that's really sensitive to the IR spectrum, I'm like, oh, that's all you guys are doing, because they're not using, it's obviously not real night vision. It's not a, phosphor tube in there doing the crystal magic that real night vision does. So, like, but then you see that in action, and I'm like, all right, I need to invest. If now that I'm getting into this, I then got a helmet and batteries, and then, because it's like, well, I started with a cheap airsoft helmet, and then I see where that fails, and it's like, okay, well, let me buy just the nice straps, and then let me buy just the nice pads, and then all of a sudden my cheap airsoft helmet has $300 in accessories of Team Wendy and hard hat veteran stuff on it, that I'm like, oh well, I should have just bought the damn $300 helmet.
I think that's where a lot of other people who have been around for a while get a little bit like, I think that's where a lot of that spirit comes from, where you get this like, stop with the nonsense, just buy this. And they're like,
Right.
so people will kind of get flustered about it, and they're like, well, I mean, I can make my own decisions for myself. And the same answer comes up time and time again. It's like, Hey man, I've done that before. Like
Mhm.
I've gone down the, oh, I can just build it myself over time, and then you look at your paycheck and you're like, yeah, I should have just bought it.
Brother, I mean, when I was putting that, I did a video just like my general purpose rifle video, and it's
Mhm.
on like I when I thought of the idea of doing a video on that rifle, I was like, this is going to be my budget rifle build. Because I bought that upper, I mean, well, shoot, I bought the lower almost 11 years ago, right? And like then just slowly bought crap for it. And
Mhm.
but in my mind, it was always, oh, that's that cheap PSA lower I bought, you know? So I'm
Mhm.
like, that's my cheap gun. And when I tallied it up, the sucker was $5,300 in crap, and I was like, oh my god, I could have bought like $5,000 AR. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking of all the Gucci AR brands that I've been like, oh, I'd never buy that shit. That's 5Gs. And I'm like, well, I've got a $5,000 Palmetto behind me. Who am I to talk like now?
Yeah.
You
No,
know?
John Lovell worked with Daniel Defense to come out with his own like Warrior Poet Society
Sure.
15 or
Yeah.
whatever, right? And the first thing that a lot of people ran into was sticker shock. And it was like, no, it's actually kind of a fair, like, Daniel Defense does not charge they're not going, like, they could lower their price and probably be okay.
Right.
But like we've also known that's where Daniel Defense's price point is at for a while. And so you get like an OD Green Daniel Defense for, was it like $3,000? It's got a pin
Mhm.
and welded 14.5, so you got your barrels set up. But it also comes with, if I'm not mistaken, a sling, a book, a coin, an optic, and a riser. So
Yeah.
you're adding a lot of stuff to it. And I think what happened for a lot of folks is it was just immediately sticker shock. And I'm laughing at that in kind of uncomfortability as I've got my rifle next to me that at a bare minimum is like 8K.
Right. And
Bare
like
minimum.
you would have never been like, I'm gonna go buy an $8,000 rifle today, but oops, here we are, right? Like,
And like I need to be honest on that too, and transparent. The some of the parts that went into that rifle were given, or were, I worked for them, so I didn't technically get them for free. I exchanged things for it, but it's still,
sure.
at the end of the day, it's like I didn't actually go and pay market price for every item on that rifle. But
Right.
damn, if you were to go and say, oh yeah, I've just got, oh my gosh, it just keeps adding and adding and adding, and
Exactly.
you know, and
But
so I think
then all makes sense all of a sudden. Like even that pin, the barrel being pin and weld, like I had a 16-inch barrel I went and chopped, which was $200 from the gunsmith, and then to pin and weld it was $180. You know, it's like, well, crap, all that you add all that into John's rifle and you're like, well, that's actually probably a deal.
it's not a
Yeah,
terrible deal. It
right.
really, it like it, and all things considered, its MSRP value is not a terrible deal. I think what it has to do with a lot of it is just a little bit of the sticker shock, where we're kind of used to things not feeling so expensive all the time.
Right.
And but ultimately that package actually adds up just fine. It's just not everybody wants to pay Daniel Defense prices, and Daniel Defense does charge a little bit of a premium for the brand, and that's not like,
Absolutely.
and so, but that's not news. That's just simply what it is.
Yeah.
Um, and so, do I have a Daniel Defense rifle? Yes, I've used them hard use plenty of times. I remember when we got DD uppers for our rifles in Ranger Battalion, and that was a game changer.
Oh, sure.
I think that is one of the single most impactful improvements that I experienced gear wise while in the military, was going from a Colt upper to a Daniel Defense upper. The second one would
Oh,
be
wow. Yeah.
the absolute second one would be going from the old Mitch helmets to the Cry helmets. That was another huge game change. And then of course there's like night vision and stuff like that, but
Yeah. Yeah.
we're off on left field at this point in time. Now I feel old. Um,
Oh, hey, brother, I hate to do this.
all right, so we're back on the show. I think we started talking a little bit like we were going to wrap things up, but instead it got extended because we made things work.
Woo.
It's good. So welcome back onto the show after a nice little afternoon break. If I live in the Southwest now, so I think I am locationally expected to do a siesta. But that's not what happened. We got the work done. So,
More work to be done.
well, then let's kind of start off. We're not going to be able to start exactly where we stepped off, because we were talking quite a bit on like different levels of cultural influence, not cultural influence, but like night vision and digital versus, and we were talking a little bit about Kit and how one of the things that I still appreciate about what you do is that, like, even if it's not going to be meta, I get something from you that's original. I get to see, like, okay, that looks neat. I enjoy what you do, and this is one thing that I think I have to be reminded to do, is that I have to remember to be thankful for this community more often.
Yeah,
And
sure.
like, all the things that we do for all the things that we put ourselves into, and so it's a good thing. But where I wanted to pick up off of there is kind of the joke. So I wonder when the next level of the meme is going to come out, where instead of it being like the FBI man arresting the CIA man,
Uh-huh.
you've seen those where it's
Yeah,
like,
it's like the pews, like they're all aiming at each other, and then it's the one way up in the rafters aiming at all of them.
yeah, or you either get those, or you get the other one where it's like CIA agent arrested by FBI agent who is like CIA agent posing as an insert criminal here is
Oh yeah.
arrested by an FBI agent posing as an insert. You know, the
Yeah.
third one is going to be, it's going to be like, so the CIA ends up spending money to go after a digital asset, which turns out to be a bot created by the CIA.
Yeah.
Like, it's only going to be a matter of time till you're like, oh wait, that's our
Uh-huh.
program. Oh crap, we can't talk about this.
Dude,
Yeah.
there's like an Arrested Development bit where they do that, and they like end up in, they're like building houses in America, but then it's like this whole fraud thing, and they end up going to Afghanistan, and they think they found weapons of mass destruction, actually Iraq, but it's like, it's called a home fill. It's just like a fake, like, like fake couches and fake like turkey dinners in like houses when you tour them. But they're like, oh yeah, it's a home fill, and they turn it over, and it's like a prop bomb, and they're like, what? It's ours, and it says like CIA USA on the bottom, and they're like, why didn't anyone tell us this is ours?
I don't know. I can't read.
Right.
Yes. I mean, we know. I've known people who've worked for various agencies, and they generally have competence. But every once in a while, you got to ask yourself, what the heck is going on there?
How did you
I don't
ever?
know. I don't know about you either, though. One of the things that's been a moderate entertainment lately is this. Was it Steve Dettelbach? Was that the guy who got? No, that's the guy who didn't make it into the head of the ATF. Who's the head of the ATF right now?
Oh yeah.
Steve
I'm blanking.
Dettelbach. Yep.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Steve Dettelbach. Yep. I was wrong. It was the other guy who was the Waco guy.
Oh yeah, the Waco guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
imagine that being your moniker, the Waco guy.
Uh-huh. And then especially after that Netflix series where everyone's just like, "You watch those children." Everyone
Yeah.
like just saw like the heinous side of it.
Yeah. They're like, wait a minute. I recognize that face from somewhere. And then like
Uh-huh. I hate it.
the CEO of Netflix is like, I gotta disappear. They're gonna make me die.
Yeah, uh-huh. I've made a poor choice here making this movie. Oops.
Yeah. The timing on this one couldn't have been worse. But no,
Mhm.
like I know I'm not saying that they're doctored, but I know that they're specifically released at a certain angle to create a certain point. But it's interesting. It's always interesting seeing like Steve Dettelbach talk about anything. And it's just like, if you couldn't be a more mindless bureaucrat, that is exactly the horror of the world right there. And
Yeah.
I forgot whether it was Ayn Rand or who was it? Was it Ayn Rand or was it the guy who wrote 1984? How am I? George Orwell, who said like the
Oh yeah.
greatest horror of the future is going to be like the uncaring bureaucrat, and it's like this dude has
Picture of
no.
that man. Yeah.
I mean, he's out of shape. He's got the he like I he I'm sure he's not unintelligent. Like, I don't want to be insulting to that level, but it's just like, you don't look like you're well prepared. You don't even look like you're well dressed. You don't even look like you know where you're at to
Right.
start at. And you've got these dudes, and don't get me wrong, no one wants to get grilled by Congress because you know that everyone's going to see you.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he's got a million pressures, but but of all of the people you could choose, like, that's a rough place to be, because
Mhm.
you don't even know the first thing about what you're talking about, or what is much more likely, he would rather be embarrassed and thought of as looking dumb than he would be being caught saying what he actually is going to say.
Right, exactly. Because I mean, he'll act like he doesn't know what anything does, but then
Yeah.
they'll legislate something about, or try to legislate something about it in the next week or whatever. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
There's this troublesome argument that comes up oftentimes about like, is it stupidity, or is it malice in
Mhm.
regards to this kind of stuff? And I think one way, if you want to know how sheltered the United States is that we're capable of keeping those things apart. Because anywhere else in the world, or anywhere else when you're in a real situation, like we're talking about, like, right, maybe not even a real one, but at some point in time, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether the person is dumb or just malicious. You're
Right.
causing
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
you're causing the deaths of millions of people, or you're bankrupting thousands of families, or like, it doesn't really matter whether you had an
Intentional or
accident.
not. Yeah. Uh-huh.
It's like, oh, I'm in charge of the nuclear reactor and I forgot to put water in the tank on Thursday. Well, there you go. The West Coast is dead now. Thanks,
Uh-huh.
Bob.
And that is your fault. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so when you're at that position where you're supposed to be the director of the ATF, you are in that position where you do not have room to make
Mm-mm.
public mistakes like that, especially
Yeah.
when you're dealing with the lives and livelihoods of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Americans, both on the business aspect, because that's the one thing that never gets talked about. Sure, a whole bunch of people a whole couple million, a small number of people who have braces are like, oh, I can't use these anymore. But now all the manufacturers, all of their employees, all of the companies, all of the gun stores, dude.
Right. Like, I mean, just SB Tactical alone, like thinking of the impact directly to them to go from like the most bought accessory to
Hmm.
no one's going to even list your product. Like, I mean, even sites like, that you would normally get stuff like that from, like, I'm sure they still have the stock around, but they're not even selling it just out of, I mean, what can you do? They're companies who want to stay open, so they're
Hmm.
following, but then all of that, like the whole, like, well, what are you going to do? It's just a job. Well, like all those end up just being like, well, now we have no rights.
Yeah, it is. I do understand that it is, to some extent, there is just the job aspect to it. Like, I don't want to be completely discrediting to this idea of, if your values need to outweigh the convenience of your position, but you also need to be able to figure out how to put food on the table. And so
Mhm.
our kind of petty either or argumentation doesn't really work here.
Yeah.
It does, but it does it, I think this is where people get really frustrated, is just there's no recourse.
Mhm.
You negligently sign a piece of paper that makes 1,000 people or 1 million people felons, and then one person negligently doesn't recognize that it's an unconstitutional law, and then goes and enforces it on somebody's lives, killing a family member, and
Right.
like, none of this is going to get better.
No, right. And if
So,
the point is to make people safer or the world safer, like that's certainly not the issue to be worrying about. Is
well, we know it's not. Like, I think we should just move on from that one. It's not.
Yeah,
It never was. It never will be, and it's not going to be about it. The safety
exactly.
excuse, what you call safety, we call slavery, and we're not interested in
Mhm.
your equation at all.
Right.
I'm just,
Exactly.
you can argue about the moral supremacy of your slaveocracy all day long, but at the end of the day, we're still going to just say no.
Because that's all it is, man. Slavery.
Mm,
That's it. Yeah.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I have what's the word? I have colonized the word slaveocracy.
It's good. I like it. You've colonized it. A
Yeah.
double.
Yeah, take that 1619 project and your
Yeah.
ahistorical nonsense. Me, a guy sitting on a leather chair saying, "Ah, gotcha." So much
Mhm.
wit, such charm. So let's get back into gun culture,
Yeah.
fauna and what's the word? Flora and fauna.
Flora and fauna.
Yeah, life and plants. Let's get let's get back into
The
let's
life
get
and plants of guns.
the life and plants of guns. Yeah. Well, you can make a bad gardening joke out of it. You can't. I'm stopping now.
Life's a garden, bro.
Yep. So, what is the how is the difference in mentality between where you've lived in the past and where you live now, specifically around the firearms industry? California and Kansas,
Yep.
California
California
and
then, and now
Oklahoma.
Kansas now. No, Kansas is where I'm at now. Yeah,
Okay.
California then Kansas. And Kansas is pretty good. It's got pretty great gun laws. It constitutional carry, and there's not a lot of limits. Easy to get suppressor and SBR is approved and all that jazz. Federal stuff still got to do. But California, it was there's 10-day waiting period. There's a roster of guns that are allowed in the state. If you have like an AR-15, by the time I left, you couldn't have anything on it. So like I had one AR that had like the fin on the back pistol grip, a non-retractable stock. It was like the Magpul fixed stock. Couldn't have a muzzle brake on it, so it was just like the thread adapter over the end and no vertical grip or anything. It was a hilarious looking gun. Like but it was one of those like as a Californian, I was like, this is the best I can do.
Yeah.
And but the flip side of that, in California, even though it's harder to get cool guns and have guns at all, really, there's a mag limit and all that. Um, the there's BLM land out in California, the Bureau of Land Management, and it's just public land. And there's lots of it on the West Coast between Arizona, New Mexico, California, all that. And you can go out and really just shoot wherever you want out there. And you know, the good thing to do is pick up your trash and take care of the area and all that. But so hard to kind of get guns, easy to go shoot them out in the hills. Whereas Kansas is the opposite. There's not much public land. It's all private farms or privately owned. So like while it's easy to get a bunch of guns, it's harder to go just like LARP out in the wilderness and have some fun with them. So I end up like either at ranges, which makes for cool conversations because I never really went to the range in California because I could just go out in the hills and shoot. But then like for what I do for my content, I like to like, put on kit and go play in the woods and shoot at paper targets. So like for me, I have to drive almost 2 hours out into the Missouri side of things. And then it's still just a public range. It's not even public land. It's just like a public range that you can kind of do this stuff at. And that's a ironic little twist of events. Like easy to get guns, hard to go shoot them.
It is a good description too, because we moved the other way. We moved from the Midwest to Arizona.
Okay,
and
yeah.
so it is a big difference. Like I was explaining to somebody about not having access to public land at the range, and I'm not saying they were confounded. It was just it was a very different story. It's like, no, where I'm from, you have to shoot at a range. Like there's no other option.
Like, yeah, but just go outside. Just go out there.
Well, I mean, I technically could shoot at in my parents' backyard because they lived on a little hobby farm, and I could. But even then, you're still looking at, how many of the neighbors want to hear blah 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 blah,
Oh,
and
right.
at like 2:00 in the morning because I'm doing nods reloads or whatever.
Right, dude. Yeah, forget it.
Yeah, people just lose. I'm not saying they'll lose their mind, but it'll get.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want my family's neighbors to hate them, kind of thing.
Exactly, dude, for sure.
But
when I moved to Kansas at first, I was like the last house on this like we're like right where suburbia meets rural, right? So it's like the last house of like a cul-de-sac, and then it was just like massive field behind my house, and it was county. So I was like, oh man, I can go shoot out on that property. It'll be great. Within like 3 months of owning my house here, all that property got bought, and within like 6 months of it getting bought, it became like a housing tract right up to the back of my property. And I was like, well, there went the little bit of public land I thought I did have.
So you technically can shoot in that direction.
Like if you're in the county and you're not pointed at a house, but now there's freaking houses every which way.
Oh no, I'm saying if you follow the philosophy of the old timers, if you don't get caught, it's not illegal.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Just do it, man. Just do it. Yeah, please don't. Yeah. So one of the things that I've experienced out here in California, or not California, out here in Arizona, is being able to use public land. And what you end up what we ended up finding out here is that there are some, we wouldn't call them designated areas, but there's the places where people typically go to shoot.
Yeah, sure.
And it's they only like, so there's just trash piled up and things that people have left out there. Mm-hmm. Was it similar to that? Was it similar that way in California, where like everyone kind of knows where you go?
Yeah, like there would just be like a couple canyons that, because of the way the water ran off, it would like naturally make like shooting lanes, which there's a forum called Cowguns, which is I spent a lot of time on there when I lived in California, and it would be like they would talk about these places like, oh, I like going and shooting off here, take this dirt road up and make a right here, and then you'll see a bunch of people go out there and shoot and have shotgun shells everywhere and stuff. But the cool thing is on Cowguns, like maybe twice a year, people would organize like, all right, let's meet up and shoot, but let's clean up, B Canyon or X Canyon or wherever we're gonna go shoot. So you'd meet up out there with some people and shoot some guns you maybe hadn't shot before, but then everyone would walk around with a rake and clean up all the shotgun shells and trash and stuff that 99% of the time people just go out there and they'd bring like old fridges and couches and they'd leave old beat up cars. I mean, the trash problem got real bad at a certain point where a lot of these like places that used to let you go shoot, and then they would have signs up like no shooting and stuff after a while. But
yeah, where we're at right now, so like this is going to be a shameless plug, but in a couple weeks here on the 16th, we're going to be putting on our first range cleanup event down here in Arizona.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
so we're partnering with some people around here as well as some local ranges and gun stores to just kind of throughout the year pick up a couple locations as we move around
Yeah.
in our immediate area, and the purpose for it is not so that people who shoot there feel unwelcome. It's rather the opposite. Like, I come from the Midwest where there is no public land, and this is an asset. Like, you do
Right.
not
Take
take
care
this
of
for
it.
granted.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we're gonna be doing a couple of events like that. But what I wanted to do is, in some sense, ask for advice. Do you have, if you've seen that happen before, or if people are like in that BLM, I mean Bureau of Land Management area, they get
Yeah.
public land to use. What, like, so they would organize it through a forum. What
Yeah,
about
through
it? And
Calguns. Yeah, that was like the main way I found out about it, because there wasn't really any local gun shops that did like tactical stuff. There was like
Mhm.
uh in where I was at, there was like a gun shop that did like lever actions, and they had some great, but like those weren't the people I was going to go put on kit with and shoot at steel with.
Nope.
So Calguns, but the Calguns community on the forum was great, and somebody would start it and be like, this day 3 months out, let's everybody plan to be there, and there would just be like a flow chart. Basically, you could sign up and be like, I'll be there in the afternoon, and I'll clean up when I leave or whatever. Um, and it was cool, and then you kind of feel like you had a little more ownership when you would go back on the forum and talk about stuff. Like, not only did you know people's faces that you met, because then you're getting FaceTime with these people you only know on the forum otherwise, but then like people recognize that you're doing something for the community. I don't know, it's nice all around. You give and you get back in return, like the, I don't know,
Mhm.
not clout's the wrong word, but like the cultural mutual admiration of each other when you're out there, mutual respect.
Yeah, no, there's like, I even did the Boy Scout thing when I was a kid.
Sure.
When I was really little, I did the whole Boy Scout thing. Well, when I was saying really little, up until I was 17ish.
Okay,
Uh,
yeah.
and it's one thing that I'm secretly waiting for, and I'm not so secretly waiting for, is when is the new version of the Boy Scouts going to come out?
I've
Because
thought
now,
that too, man.
like when is the next version? Because we're due for a restart. I mean,
Yeah.
the whatever it is called Scouting America right now is nothing, is a laughing stock, and it's
Mhm.
unfortunate. And maybe with good leadership, they can turn their boat around. And I think it's certainly a redeemable product. But the challenge is that you look at, like, you look at so many people who actually utilized it when they were younger. Like,
Mhm.
I guess, because I think back to it, and there were some arguments like, oh, well, you want to get your Eagle Scout because you get to enlist with an extra rank or whatever. And when you get in the military, then none of that matters.
Right.
Or, there's a couple of other little features and factors that kind of come into effect. But in reality, the thing that you want to do it for is the experience and the people that you
Yeah.
spend your time with, and you like get out into the woods. And I think I took that for granted. I really do.
Mhm.
Um, what would a but yeah, what would an adult version of the Boy Scouts look like? I don't know.
Yeah, man, like a, I don't know, it'd be fun to get some like weekend survival trips out there or something, like do like a, just go camping with the boys or whatever, but make it have some purpose. You could
Hmm.
get a larger group and be like, we're going to cover like, X amount of miles over X amount of days, and there's no contact, use, only your wits about you and all that stuff. I mean, obviously that's just a fun weekend trip, but trying to think how you could work that into teaching like leadership skills and uh different, like if you're good at close, you help learn long range stuff from somebody else, or if you're not good at reading a map, you can learn that from people who might be able to teach you some more tracking stuff, like where the
Hmm.
community really can, like you said, there is a community even online. So like if that collective group of people puts their brain together in person, like it's going to be 10 times as strong.
Yeah, we had a guy on recently. It was he was a Pacific Northwest guy, really neat character, and he talked about that, actually, how he had been putting on these events, and he had been putting together these kind of like these range day events for some people, and then it grew and it grew and it grew and it grew until it was so big he couldn't manage it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And um there was some other issues. I guess I don't know all the details. I'm not going to make assumptions, but
Yeah.
like, it was neat to see him talk about it, because it did become so big. And Brent, I almost called him Bruce for a minute. I was like, his name is not Bruce, and I don't want to get
It's
it
a
wrong.
B. It's a B.
Well, okay, fine. Like I'm going to make an excuse, but I'm not going to. I apologize, Brent. I should know you better. Um, but he was on just a couple of weeks or last week, and then we talked about it for a bit. And I think we're at the phase now where we can stop dreaming about it. We can start putting things to paper. Like
Yeah, that's true.
do you have enough people in your Rolodex to be like, hey, let's go do something? And I know some people are just not going to be able to make it, and they're going to continue to not be able to make it, and that's kind of fine. But what was it like moving from California to the Midwest as far as like the gun culture in the new area? What was
Uh,
it like? Were you able to integrate pretty well?
I suppose I don't have like a huge group that I shoot with around here. When I first moved to Kansas, it was like right before COVID kicked off, and then so it was no one was really doing anything, um, and I then I have to drive a couple hours to shoot, so I do have like 4 dudes that I will hit up to go shoot with all the time. And usually one of them will come with me. So it's usually just me and another dude out there at a time. Whereas when I was in California, I would train with my buddy was on the sheriff in the southern part of California down there, and he was on one of the more like direct action teams, and he'd be like, "Dude, come train with our guys out there," and that was always a good time.
Ooh, I am jealous of you.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that access is the point. I'm jealous in the sense of like, it's a good feeling to have. I'm glad to hear.
yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry to hear. I'm sorry for your loss. Now that you're in Kansas,
Yeah, yeah. The core group has gone there. Huh?
it takes some time. I think since in the time since COVID, in this kind of pit of time since then, we've seen a lot of people move around, and so I'm wondering how many of us are in that same boat because we moved in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
We moved in 22. I've known some other people who moved in 2022, and it's interesting how this culture is actually very national. It's very nationally focused, first of all, and then there's like the closer you get to where you're at, the more nuanced it gets. And then there are some places like there's a California, I'm sorry, there's a Texas crew, and then there's like a Pacific Northwest crew, and
Right. Yeah.
there was an Appalachian crew, but I don't know where they're at anymore. And
Mhm. I actually had recently on one of my comments somebody because I shouted out a local gun shop that helped me out with some transfers, and some people recognized the name because it's just the name of the town, the Olathe Gun Shop, and they were like Olathe, Kansas, and I was like, yep, sure enough, and they were like, dude, you need somebody to shoot with, and I was like, I do. Email me, let's hang out, and that was the end of it, but. But I
oh,
feel like the need of it is around here still. Like I feel like the pull for it's there. So maybe as my channel grows, maybe I can start something out this way for Kansas people. Who knows?
why don't we just get started on that now?
Yeah, boom. There it
Whoever
is.
whoever's listening in the Kansas area, let's
Yeah.
start with let's because we've been thinking right now where we're redacted is at is we're just shy of about 10,000 people on Instagram, which it's not
Nice.
really about it's not the numbers for me is not so much about my perspective, like what do I get out of it. It's more like, okay, so when we reach this benchmark, can we do this?
Yes.
And one of them is going to be starting chapters. Not chapters in the sense of like official rank and file chapters. We're not trying to do no 3%er like I'm a squad leader in the freaking,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's more like, okay, like so that we have resources where I know somebody in a certain area who's like, hey, if you who I can talk to ahead of time, right? So like,
Absolutely. Yeah.
you know what I mean? So like let's just use my alma mater, or my not my alma but like Minnesota. Do I know somebody in Minnesota who's like, I know a couple people that are like, oh yeah, hey, look, such and such is looking to integrate into a community, and these are people that I trust. And so then the people can kind of integrate with each other. I don't get to do all of it. Like I'm just in some sense I'm just the matchmaker.
Right. Yeah.
But that's something that I would like to see happen more, is that people can reach out and be like, hey, I'm in this area, and I'm looking for people who share some of my values and then have similar interests, and we
Yeah.
can just connect you. Because I mean, to me, that's the best thing ever. Um,
I totally agree. And that's even my biggest need. Like I felt a uh not an acceptance, but like an allowance to sort of dig into this tactical gear thing and training a lot more as my my page got accepted more, right? So like
Mhm.
the as weird as it was, like as more people were hopping on board, being like, "Oh, I'm like this. I like to do this, and I like these things. That's cool. I didn't know I was allowed to like go buy a plate carrier." Like, like the average Joe, some people that I was in bands with growing up, like they thought like a lot of this stuff was totally not allowed, and then I'm like, no, it's totally allowed, and it can help you out if you're like, if you're trying to be more prepared. And then, I mean, everybody knows how crazy the world is, and you start talking to people. And I have pulled people into the fold thought who thought this stuff was like, totally taboo at first, and then you dig into it and you're like, oh, it's just like another level of preparedness. But like as like you said, you're reaching like 10,000. Like I'm just now getting to a point of, I just hit 5,000 on Instagram, where it's like, the if I say stuff, if I recommend a product, there are people that will, that my word has weight to it. So I want to make sure that I'm being honest in that regard. But then how you're saying, like thinking about how can I direct the people who do like vibe with me, like, well, let's all be better. Let's get together and make like you're saying, like a chapter or whatever. But like if you're local to KC and you like, training tactical gear, and you want to work on becoming a better person and being a better survivalist all around, like let's get together and let's work on stuff, and let's take a couple weekends a year and hash out some of these things and train and prepare. Like that'll make the whole community as a whole. Then if we all do a big meetup, every couple of years, we can all get together as like, oh, all of these little chapters we know about can all get together and do something fun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A little bit less. Let's see, a little bit less. Oh, I'm trying to find a word. Like the where I get to play in is the space between something that's too official and too ambiguous.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, like the whole point of the brand Redacted, or the whole point of the name Redacted, is that, like it is. I play in the irony of being a public figure with a brand that's focused a little bit on privacy,
Yeah.
but on the same thing, um, we don't. It doesn't need to be just focused on certain objects, and so
Right. I mean, even that's part of why I wear the mask and stuff, is just because like I I may not be hiding who I am, but I also, it's not about who I am. It's like it's just about whatever the heck I'm talking about. Like I don't think that my person, quote unquote, character has much to do with what I'm talking about as Bargain Bin in this role, right? So like in that way, I'm sort of doing the same thing you are, where it's like a public figure that doesn't really need to have, like, the figurehead doesn't need any clout.
when are we going to see a Bargain Bin technical? Just
Oh,
saying.
ooh, that's a good idea. I had a van. I sold it. Well, actually, I got in a wreck and I got told, and then I just didn't buy another one. But I was trying to turn it into like a little like mobile like deployment center thing. But it's a good idea, man. I need to get one of those, like, what is that? Not Tacoma. What's the one that they always turn into the
The Hiluxes,
Yeah, Hilux. There we go.
yeah, if you can get them, they're like near
Yeah.
impossible. But
Uh-huh.
you know, there's a reason why everyone has one or wants
That's
one.
true. That's true.
Yeah,
I mean, that'd be sick, dude. Bonds around in one of those things.
it's just I like, to a certain extent, I don't know what I would do with a technical, even where I'm living at. Like, I would just probably get arrested a lot, and
Right,
then
you get pulled over all the time. That's it.
yeah. But at the same time, it would also be like, look at my stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I
Uh,
enjoy walking out to the car every day, just be like, oh hell yeah, look at that thing.
hmm Yes, yes. Look, I did. Yes, I did the paint job myself. It is officially Krylon Rattle Can Tan.
Yep.
So, what is it going to blend in with? Absolutely nothing.
It
What does it
doesn't
look
matter.
like? Everybody knows.
Yep, awesome.
Yeah. When you've gone so gray, man, that you glow.
Strike Industries? Is that you?
No, no, no. Strike Industries is everybody's secret cyberpunk fetish. Maybe fetish isn't the right word.
There's no
Uh,
secret about it for me. I love them.
yeah, Strike Industries is like one of those guys where you go, you know what? I don't want to like it, but I really do, and this is
Uh,
cool. And then you, because you're like, wow, it's so. But then at the same time, when I started seeing some of their stuff coming out, I really just wanted to build like the most cyberpunk rifle I could ever do.
yeah,
So,
dude.
didn't never finished the project, unfortunately.
Mhm. Yeah, they I think the first thing I got from Strike was, it was, one of their like workaround products, where it was like a hand stop that was like a vertical grip, more or less, that was like just angled enough to not be an issue or whatever. Um and I got it, and I was like, oh, this is actually like it feels pretty awesome. So then it was like I got some other tiny little strike thing, and then the first thing I got this like RMR shield for my Holosun, and it had like dog doo doo reviews, straight up. Like everyone was like, the second I got it, I torqued it down, or I tried to torque it down, and the screw stripped. And I have stripped out my fair share of screws in the day, so I had avoided the product for forever. And then I love the look of it. There's really nothing that has like an RMR shroud apart. I think LMT did one for a little while, or maybe LaRue.
Mm-hmm.
And but those were like, you know, pricey and hard to find. And this one, I was like, it's like $80 or something. I think, I don't know if it totally sucks at the end of the day. I guess I'll just have learned my lesson to not trust it. And I have got this thing, and I've never had any problems with it. And I've put it on a bunch of different rifles. And then I just lastly got their little Strike's little folding stock deal, and that was another one. I just been eyeballing it for forever, and
Are you talking? Are you talking about the reflex exoskeleton? They'll put the
yeah,
little wings on the side.
yeah, the
Yeah.
Rex, yeah,
Yep. 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 I'm familiar with a lot of their products. I just have never used that one.
yeah.
And I was
And
like,
I have
oh,
that, and I use it. I have it as a. I've had it on top of a primary arms like 2 times to kind of make it look like a hammer, HAMR, that recoil.
yeah.
I was like going for that look, and then right now I just moved that little mount over to piggybacked on a LPVO I have, and it works great. And because it just it's like a finger torque screw, kind of like the Scalar Works, like quick detach mounts. Um, I can pop it on and off and put it on a bunch of guns. With what I'm doing, it works really well because if I'm swapping optics around, I can just unscrew this guy and screw it on another one. And I've only ever had to re-zero at one time. Like even moving it between rifles, it's generally like good enough for hitting steel at 25 to 50 yards. And I'm like, well, I can't complain.
Nice. Yeah. It's I'm getting to that point where I almost feel like just looking back isn't enough because I remember I remember when I was using an ACOG
Mm-hmm.
way back in the day. And it's like I still have I have an old ACOG in my inventory. And it's like one of those things where we have come so far with certain things. Like I've seen Vortex makes their 3 power and their 5 power prisms, which are great optics
Yeah,
for
sure.
what they are. Like they're basically, a replacement for a whatever. But they're a great optic with a decent eye relief. But then you can put like a red dot on top of them, and you're just good to go.
Yeah.
And I've
Mhm.
used those before. There's always the LPVO versus whatever wars, and people can fight about
Yeah,
that.
for sure. Yeah.
And ultimately, it goes back to like where we started, in that range of like, okay, man, do you do the thing or do you not do the thing?
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah. I mean, there's like I'm all for like a cheap copy of something if it still works right, right? Like what I'm not for is like a when people just copy stuff to copy like a look or something, and it's just a garbage product at the end of the day. Like I like these little monstrum risers. I think they have a funny name like Phoenix or something. I don't know, but it's like it's just a little inch riser to get your optic up a little bit,
mm,
and they're only like $30 or $40. And I have a few of them, and they work great. Um, but they're not like trying to be like it doesn't like say Unity on the side. It's just another inch riser.
mm,
But like I got what was supposed to just be it was like Hydra like optic riser from Amazon. And then when the box showed up, it's like GBRS branded, and I'm like, well, this is lame. Like, because you're trying to steal, like you're counterfeiting their product. That's different than like Monstrum being like, oh, we can make a riser too. Like, oh, it kind of looks like a triangle. Oh well, but like you're not trying to make it like say that it's Unity or make sales because of that. So then, but that one, it doesn't even have the recoil lug though, the GBRS riff op. So I'm like, not only did you steal their design, you didn't steal it enough. Like you did, if you're gonna totally steal it, then at least make it functional. I don't know, but now it's like it's just a slick top. That's just I mean I threw the 4 screws in there. I'm gonna see how long it takes to kill the thing.
yeah, no, it's unfortunate watching people do these knockoffs. Yeah, I'm just googling even Hydra mount knockoffs.
Yeah.
and I've got a couple of them for like $50, and it's people are going to do that. I think
Mhm.
that's a moral question that we all have to deal with too, is because I've been around the gun industry for a little while, and I've seen you see this happen every once in a while. It's like everyone gets really, really skittish about sharing their ideas
Yeah.
because they're afraid someone's going to take it, and for good reason, because there are people in this industry who have names and faces that people generally know, who, like, you don't talk to them. They're anathema, and oftentimes they burn themselves out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Major companies have done it too, where they just straight up steal somebody's product idea, and or not even steal it. They like do a really shady deal, and many of those companies are not with us anymore.
Yeah.
And and so um but the problem, there's a difference between doing that, and I think this kind of turns into like an inside group versus outside group preference, is that I don't I am not happy of the fact that you will have foreign made knockoffs of knockoffs imported into the United States and sold ad infinitum.
Oh, brother. Yeah. The
You
whole
know,
optic circle of the that little Spina thing. Yeah.
the what?
That Kraken Spina, that little box optic that everyone's being revealed around that right now, that like is one of those. It's like a $60 closed emitter optic that
Mm.
all these big companies are slapping their brand on and reselling for $400 instead.
Um, Let me look around at that one. Let's see, Kraken, Kraken Compact. Okay, so yes, this one's being made by Swamp Fox, or being sold by Swamp Fox.
Yeah, like I have the Swamp Fox one, and that's how I actually heard about this. Is somebody pointed out to me because I have the Swamp Fox Kraken, which is like $200 or $300, something like that, $300 maybe.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
and they're
yeah.
like,
No, they're.
"Oh, it's a copy of this," and then
Mm,
it's like Geisley released one, but it goes back, and I'm like, I don't know how much these companies are like. It's just an optic design too. Like, are you saying it's a square red dot? Like, that's where I'm like,
there's sort of a range of acceptability too,
yeah,
because what I don't like to see. So I like, one of the things that happens in some of that too is that various companies will. Let me see if I can say this, right. Is that you'll have manufacturing happening in, say, you'll have an overseas manufacturing plant, and they'll come out with a model, or they'll come out with two or three models, and then they'll sell that model to different bidders.
right,
Or yeah, they'll sell those models to different bidders, and I think, to give some people some grace, which I believe is deserved, not everyone gets informed about everything that gets sold to everyone. So
sure,
that
yeah,
so there's a little bit of like, okay, but then there's also the questionable transparency as well, because how many of these are made in the same factory, what are the one-off variations, and the third part that you're asking, and you got to do the you got I think this is the part that the audience misses out oftentimes, is what's the cost of doing business.
yeah. Oh, sure, yeah,
You know what I mean? Because like, I can technically, you could think of this optic, right? Like, what is the infrastructure necessary on the United States side in order to import and sell this product? Sure,
Mhm.
the company is buying it for, say, $50, because they're buying it from an overseas manufacturing system. But the infrastructure necessary to sell you individually that optic
Right,
is
totally different.
is at minimum $100 at extra cost, not counting then personnel, then counting something else, and then you got to deal with some sort of profit. So like, it
Yeah,
doesn't mean that people have issues. It's that I don't have an issue with somebody coming out with a $350 enclosed red dot. The question that I'm curious is, does it perform, and does it perform as advertised?
right, exactly,
And
and
then
that,
on Yeah, and then we can get into issues, and then, so like, that's a good starting position, and then also, um is it stolen? Is this stolen IP? Because that would be a question. Or is it simply a good idea is going to get shared?
right, yeah,
Like, um Acro doesn't have a corner on the closed emitter. Are
right.
they
You
f-
can't,
are,
yes, it's not the first time a rectangle has thought to have been made into an optic. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
yeah,
Are they the first and best dressed? Maybe.
Yeah,
I've been using a one of those a lead and steel Pandora.
yeah. I just got one of those too.
I've been playing around with one of those for about a month now. I've had it on a handgun and on a rifle, and I really like it on a rifle. I'm not quite sure on a handgun yet. Like I tend to enjoy it, but I've got it on a duty handgun right now, and then I'm going to put it on a competition handgun.
Yeah, I
Um,
have it on like my everyday carry right now, which is a 01 tactical, the AirX, and it's a little large on there, but it's not like it doesn't ride any larger, so it's just physically a little larger on there. Is my only.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
winter.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. We're good.
it's winter carry.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, it's
No,
great. I really enjoy the optic itself. It's awesome.
Mhm. But the point on that one is, it was Brent from last week who's talking about they live in the Pacific Northwest, and you will have a fully enclosed optic on your pistol, or it will not work.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think, yeah, I think that's an interesting. Oh, yep, swamp. Correct. Yep. So even recoils picked them up, enclosed emitters. The Swamp Fox Kraken, and I think their Wolverine was the slide. Good for
Oh,
them.
nice. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just kind of bouncing around a little bit to see what's up because I now we're about to see we are in the thick of the enclosed emitter wars and who's
Yeah,
going to win.
certainly. Uh-huh.
Yeah, do I want a tan acro? Absolutely. Am I going to drop $200 or $1,200 for it today? No, I don't
No,
have that
I hear
cash to throw.
you. Uh-uh.
But when I do and I can, will I consider it?
Mhm.
Probably.
Yep. Will it match my tan X300? Then I will definitely consider it harder.
Oh, yeah. So
Is it
you're
really
one
gonna be tan?
you're you're one of those.
Yes, I am.
Mhm. One of those people. Now
It
I must make judgments on your moral character by the choice of firearm you carry.
mhm. It comes down to most of my holsters are cut for X300s now, so I'm low to the game now.
Dude, I've been using the same X300 that I stole from a crate in the military on my second deployment from some National Guard guy.
Love it.
I
That's
don't
awesome.
think that's actually the story, but it's something like that. Like
Yeah.
some dude, some guy in our platoon walked into our tent one day and he's like, "Hey, I just found this crate of flashlights. Who wants one?" Like,
Oh my
yeah.
goodness. Yeah, sure. Oh yeah, they're for sure free for me. Yep. All
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that's a come up right there, and it's still
Yeah.
working. I mean, that's good. That's
Yeah, it's 11 years old. It's let's see, it's 13 years old now and it still burns.
yep, probably
Yep.
bright as the day it turned on.
I don't know about that one, but it is definitely like it's one of those now where I want to retire it because I'm like, man, this is kind of a piece of my history. I don't,
Yeah.
like I don't want to lose this.
Mm-hmm.
But until that day comes.
Right.
So, well, that's
Uh,
a lot. I mean, it is a lot of fun. We need to get back into some fun conversation here, though.
yeah. Let's do it.
So community building in Kansas is something that we want to do, and I drive through Kansas every once in a while.
Nice.
What are some things that you've seen on the media side that I want to go back to some kind of comparisons with you and the music side?
Oh sure.
Because you were saying something earlier that I thought was actually kind of interesting on how the music industry, you referred to like everyone's trying to be a solo, everyone's trying to kind of figure themselves out.
Right. Yeah.
And I see a little bit of that in the gun culture. Um you see it from time to time, I guess. I don't get it as I don't get it as much. I don't know if I'm mistaken there.
Hmm.
So, what about
Yeah.
you've been doing pretty well on YouTube lately.
Yeah. Thanks,
You,
man.
you like I've been able to catch up on a couple things, and it's intriguing. How have you gone through finding holes where not everyone else is going the same direction without just trying to be a hipster?
Yeah. I mean that was initially, or not initially, like when I did the bullpup video, my first one. I initially then I was like, oh my gosh, because that video did really well for me. So I was like, then when my other videos it had like 10,000, 15,000 views, and I was like, well, that's sick. And then this one was like 70,000. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to capitalize on whatever I did for this. So then I was like, I just can only do weird stuff, right? So then I started like, I ended up in this like crippling. I didn't make any content for like a month because I was like, well, this is all just too plain. I can't. There's no angle, you know. And then, like I mentioned earlier, where I had to like remember that, like, oh no, like Rick Rubin, you know, you make the content for yourself, and if it speaks to your audience, it speaks to them. If not, it doesn't. But like if you try to make content that does speak to them, it's not going to be good content anyway, whether it's a song or a gun review. You know, like it's like it has to come from a place of honesty. So that was where like I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to take a pause until the something cool really comes up for me. And the triad was one of the next things on the kit. I had an opportunity in there. Like I made friends with a guy through talking to him on YouTube comments who happens to have some really dope guns, and we started like talking together, and he was like, well, I'd love to like send a couple to you. And I did a video on a 416, and it was because he was kind enough to send me one. And that like initially I was like, well, how is this, why do I even need to make a video on this? But I wanted to, but it's not like I'm telling people go buy an $8,000 H&K 416 because like they're hard to clone and impossible to make, and you know, like so like why does it even belong on Bargain's Bin page? But that was that whole angle of like, well, I just want to show off this cool item to my audience. And the real bargain is that we all got to look at it for a little while, you know, like that we all got to play with it and just like see a piece of history, and then that goes back. Like I didn't get to keep that gun certainly, and you know, like, and I just had to be like, okay, this probably isn't going to get the view numbers that like your more unusual kits might get, but like it was important for me to want to put it out as somebody wanting to just create that, right? And then it's made content moving forward a lot easier now that I'm just like, well, I just want to make this because I want to make it. And then it was, you know, it was easier to make the next thing. And like now I'm editing a couple of videos now where it's like I'm working on talking about one of them coming up is a P90, which is another one that guy sent me, a gun that I wouldn't have normally got a chance to play with. So there's like another one of those kind of deeper dive videos coming out on like a more unusual just gun I think is cool. And then more on my side of things, I'm going to do a deep dive review on one of these SMS lasers that's about the IR illuminator one and stuff. And that'll be more where I'm, instead of just like talking about something cool, I'm trying to like inform people of like, hey, this is a bargain product that's actually pretty decent. And you know, while it may not replace your end goal, it's gonna be cool to like get a couple other guns with some night vision capabilities and have some fun with. You know, like it. But that's where I feel like I'll have a place to speak into it, and that's where I'm kind of trying to focus on, is like either the item needs to be uniquely cool or something that's just not really covered that well. So then I can either have my weird perspective on it, or my, hey, here's just the facts, but I'm the only one who's got it so far. So here's some cool stuff about it, you know?
Yeah. So like my experience on the military side is that you oftentimes see things, overbuilt is not the right word, but you oftentimes see things built for specific issues to be solved. For example, I think it was Slade, who is a former Navy SEAL guy, was talking about, he had like a Somo, one of those knockoff UHPs, which was made by Somo Gear. It's airsoft IR. It's got some. I've seen them. I'm not going to speak to them, but they're apparently potted and everything, which means they're actually packed, so like recoil resistant.
Yeah.
But what we've been seeing, what he said is he's used to using the real version of it in the military, and one of the comments that somebody had made said something like, the knockoff worked for a long while. It held at zero and everything until it got wet, and then it had to dry out. And Slade's response was, yeah, well, I mean, I'm used to using official UHPs in salt water, underwater, under pressure for this amount of time, and then coming out of the water and then being just fine.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not a Navy SEAL, so I can't verify, but like that's a pretty big ask, right?
Right.
And so,
yeah.
And so I think one of the angles that you bring that I find actually interesting is coming from these different solutions to contemporary problems and really finding out where their limits are. Because like, let's take a really easy example, right? Of like a laser, for example. I can't put it on an SR25 or a SCAR, because a SCAR's got a notoriously heavy recoil pattern or whatever.
Yeah.
So I can't put it on a SCAR because it'll rattle it to death, but I can put it on a properly suppressed 300 blackout.
Yeah.
You know, that's a solution. That really is a solution.
Mm-hmm.
It is, so long as I know it's going to handle the recoil, but it doesn't perform well in let's say it doesn't perform well in humid environments. It doesn't have a proper ceiling, so the glass tends to fog or something like that.
Sure. Right.
Is
Yep.
there a company like Villain Weapon Systems that makes a solution for it? If so,
Mm-hmm.
I may not be creating an end goal, and I'm not intending on reproducing something that's quote just as good. But I am interested in solutions that are unorthodox because the more ways that we can get into this working, the better off we are.
Right.
So long as we're not, lying to ourselves and saying that this is going to be able to perform at 30,000 feet.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just having the real perspective of, I think like we were saying earlier, a lot of people, they'll be like, this isn't budget night vision. It's $4,000. And I'm like, well, that is budget. If you're looking at real night vision, like, sure, if you're looking at, Timu and you see a PVS looking thing that's $50 and you're like, I can see it at night. Well, maybe, but like they are not apples to apples. And
Timu, I've been seeing their ads all over the place. Is Timu just a what is that? Is that, do they just sell you fake things? Like, you see the ad and it's just like a miniature version of it or something?
I personally haven't bought anything from it, but I do know a fellow creator who has. He bought a whole plate carrier setup and pouches and all that. And I've been too scared to even purchase from that website because it looks like you just never get your item. But sure enough, he got a little box with bunch of stuff. It exists. He got it.
Hey, I mean,
It wasn't miniature. It might not, it might not stand the test of time, but the stuff showed up as
yeah,
advertised.
he put it on, he ran outside and it immediately evaporated. And then he was,
Yep. And then they sucked him back to the motherland right away. Shoop.
yeah, something like, yep, or yeah, it
Imagine
came,
seeing some of that gear under night vision would probably be hilarious. It's probably just,
uh,
fully reflective.
it actually just is like IR
Yeah.
illuminating.
Yeah.
Yeah. How are you glowing in the dark?
It's a feature, not a bug.
You will have cancer by the time you take it off. I'm like, oh no.
Oh man.
Yes, it actually just has the signatures of the slave labor it's made with.
You're like, this is the brand, and like, no, that's the man who made it.
Yeah,
Or the child who stitched your vest together.
13 children died in the process of making this plate carrier. You're like, wow, this is getting
Full
morbid.
life
Jeez.
expectancy of
Yeah.
20 years old.
Yeah. I hope, it's just it will actually last forever because it's just made out of asbestos.
Oh golly.
Do not breathe while wearing this.
Please don't get shot. It's not the shrapnel that will kill you. It's you're breathing in the particles we made this with.
Yeah, it's just it actually just says do not breathe while wearing, and you're like, what am I supposed to do about it?
This is just another reason
Hilarious.
to get a gas mask, dude.
Another reason to get another gas mask. I have
See.
one. The most I've used my gas mask for is urban exploring and painting
Yeah, there you go.
the house.
The house.
Yeah,
If it gets cold enough around here, I'll slap that on because it keeps my face a little warmer if I'm going out taking the dog out.
that's pretty solid. Yeah, it's pretty. We'll go back. It's pretty metal.
Yeah.
I'm sure the neighbor.
My ears are chilly. Oh my gosh. And on my street, one of the neighbors that moved in is like a Ukrainian refugee family, and I can only imagine when they look out in the snow and they see me in full kit with like a light on my head taking my dog out. But it's my yard, so
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's just remember this is America and you're a refugee. We were
welcome home. Welcome here.
You're welcome here. We love you. We'll take care of you real good. Make you some hot dish.
I always see that Step Brothers where they're trying to like keep people from buying the house where they're just being ridiculous in their front yard. I'm just like, that's just me, but to them,
This is bad economics.
yeah.
We'll make it out. Well, let's wrap up here then. Let's actually close off because I'm going to have to go and cut through some of this video to figure out where we're going to make it in the middle. But this has been a great chat, and it's getting late in the day, long in the tooth for both of us. But
Understandable. Yeah.
I've enjoyed this conversation in some ways because it's nice to get a little bit lighthearted again. But I still want to say, like, I want to say this one more time before I forget. Like, I'm really thankful that you're a part of the community and that you're putting in your own effort and energy to see what you produce. And it's something from my little ivory tower that I get to be thankful for. And it's like, for all the negativity that goes on around there, people come and go. And I think that one of the things that we are trying to do better is that we're trying to do better at the culture side of gun culture, and that's what we do here. So
dude. And that seriously, it's huge to someone like me, and not only as a new kid on the block, but as like someone who doesn't come from experience, like a lot of the 2A peeps come from military or law enforcement. So it's just cool to hear that like you on that side of the table can see my side of the table and not not think I'm an idiot for wanting to be into this stuff, or beyond that, you even take what I have to say with a grain of salt and maybe learn a thing or two, and just like I learned from you guys, it's really awesome.
I mean, I still think you're an idiot, just a different
Oh
type.
yeah,
I
big
don't
time,
know.
big
I
time.
don't know why you're talking to me. This is like the wrong business model.
I'm sorry. I gotta go. I gotta go. I gotta.
You need to go back. You need to go back to doing music so you can be slightly less poor.
Yeah. Oh, no, no. That there was plenty of boredom in the music industry. Don't you worry.
Oh, you're not, dude. You did not step up in the economic ladder. You stepped down.
No. Yeah.
You know, it goes from Christian music, or sorry, it goes from music to Christian music to gun culture. You're just on the way down, man. So
at least I'm consistent. I'm moving. I'm moving in a direction, and I've got a path.
yes, yes, you are doing all right. You know, you have an end in mind, and it's not when they start selling your kit at the Goodwill, then I'll start asking
There we
questions.
go. It's either the Goodwill is one side of it, and the other side of it is maybe I'll be a COD operator by the end of next year. Who knows?
Ooh, yeah, you know, we should
Put
put
me
in a
in
petition.
Activision. Do it.
We,
Put me
we
in.
should we should put in a petition to the characters that need to be in COD because they
Yeah.
did the whole like Nicki Minaj thing.
Boo.
And like I get what they're trying to do. I just wonder like who told you this idea? Like
Right. And if you want to make like icons in like this, why don't you do, I don't know, there's so many other you could even chose like famous paintballers, and at least it would have been like, oh well, they kind of handle weapons. Okay.
I'm it doesn't even have to be that one. It's just like I got this I got the impression of it's just kind of like it's a phase mom, it's not going to age well and they're like okay, okay, we're done here.
Hmm.
You know, it's just
And it
it's
always feels like they finally put celebrities in when they're like on the way out in real life. Like now you're putting Nicki Minaj in now, like her hits were all like 6+ years ago.
I
That's
does this skin color and assumed gender make you think that I know anything about Nicki Minaj?
Well, big facts. My bad. My bad.
Yeah. How dare you? How dare you?
You're like, wait, she's not still relevant? Oh no.
Yeah. Why didn't they put Greta Thunberg in there? She should just have an automatic nuke. She's like, I kill the pores. We need to make the world clean
I
again.
mean, if lethality is the goal, she's the one.
Yes. If you,
Anyways, we were wrapping it up, weren't we? We're about
we
to piss off
we
everybody.
were, but then I got into the bitter jokes. So All right. So you are the only person who has used an has made a has gotten me to look at a bullpup for the second time since Halo Combat Evolved.
Yes.
So I am still not convinced, but I think I'm open.
Hmm.
Having worked with a former Brit, he seems to be very proud of a bullpup design. So maybe I got to
Nice. Yeah.
follow up with you on that one. But um, let's go back to telling people where to find you and if people want to support or be a part of your program, what do they do?
Sure. Well, if you want to be a part of what I do, just follow me on Instagram or YouTube over at Bargain Bin Tactician. Just at Bargain Bin Tactician on either one of those, and you can connect with me. If you leave me a comment or DM me on Instagram, I'll usually get back to you within a couple hours. On YouTube, I try to reply to comments within a few days. And really, I do try to get back to everybody who just says something to me. So
Mhm.
I'm at the size where I can still manage to do that, even though it might take me a few days. So, hey, if you want to connect, now's the time. Come connect. And if you're local to KC, shoot me an email. Let's get together. Let's go train. Let's build some real community around here for sure.
Let's do yeah, absolutely. I'm just checking my phone right now real quick because I've noticed that request I'll get people who haven't messaged me before and they'll get requests
Mm-hmm.
and then they'll end up in my hidden requests section.
Yep.
So I need to go back into it a little bit more and check on these because I just checked right now and I've got at least one or two from this last week that are well, okay, so that's a porn account. Those can go to
Yeah,
delete.
that spam folder gets blocked with mass amounts of like, hey, we can make you patches, or hey, look at my webcam, or every once in a while, it's somebody who doesn't follow you but has a real question, and then you have to dig through the muck to find them.
Yeah. No, the let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. The top 4 are all porn, which is gross, and you can go die. And then the
Again,
next
why
one
is that
after
on
that,
Instagram? Like, there's
the
not enough places to go do that.
no, it's just no. You want to know why it's on Instagram because Instagram likes it. It makes them money.
It's
So
true. It's true. It's
you know
big facts. Yeah.
oh well, I'm jaded for life.
Yep.
If Elon Musk can pull Twitter out of the engagement farm verse, then we'll be good. But
Yeah.
not until that day.
Uh-uh.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on the Redacted Culture Cast and having a good old lighthearted talk about a little bit of the things that you do. Like Cody, it's been a great chat. I know we've covered a whole bunch of stuff though. We've talked about kind of some of the issues facing social media, you coming from the music side and seeing the difference between the media side or not media, the music culture and then coming into gun culture. So again, welcome to the community.
Thank you, sir.
We've also talked I think I've actually enjoyed the lightheartedness on this one because we've talked a lot about gear in a way that isn't so centered on gear.
Yeah.
You know, I think we can all take a step back and breathe a little bit and recognize that for many people we're kind of figuring things out. But
Yeah.
hey, you know, if you're in a high stress immediate environment now, then maybe now is not the time to explore. But if you're not now, then maybe explore. It's kind
Yeah.
of a simple method. But yeah, no, I really do.
Different way to do something, figure it out.
There are, and some of them are worse than the ways that you've done them before. So you just gotta learn it. But I think it's a good time to branch out, get more people involved.
Same
But
here, man.
I love it. All right. So if those of you who are still listening to the show, you know how to find us. You can find us on Instagram. We are at redactedllc.com. That's our let's see. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. Instagram is at Redacted LLC. We're close to 10,000, and then we can start doing some bigger projects. If we're going to get into chapter building or community building, we want to keep working in that direction. You can also support us over at redactedculture.locals.com. And that's where you can just straight up support our page, get backside interviews and stuff like that. That's where I'm putting most of my gun reviews and longer form conversation. We need to get a couple more people following so I can get more upload time for that. But I am currently working through a long form on the SR25 versus the M110 clone or the Saber 10 by PSA. And so it's doing a longer form version of it. And like the sneak peek is I started with 2 guns, one PSA 308 and one SR25. Neither of them had been fired. So they were both fresh when the review started. But that's mostly on the Redacted Culture page. And then if you want to just pick out some of our stuff, like some of our merch, you can go over to redactedllc.com and let's see if this will even work. Boom, there you go. And there you go. Let's bring this up onto the screen. And boom, there you go. So you can go over to Redacted LLC. And we've got this Don't Be a Loot Drop sticker. They're glittery. They're good for tagging your friends. And there's about 20 of them in stock. So we'll talk to you guys later. And we will follow up with you as we can. But remember, in all things, go forth and conquer.